Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm excited to welcome Casey Reed to the show. Casey is a music director based in New York City. He's also the co-host of one of my all-time favorite podcasts, the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you very much. Wow, all time. That's high praise.
It's true. It really is, honestly.
We have a ton of fun with it.
I love listening to you guys.
Yeah, we have a ton of fun with it. And we love our listeners, and you're one of our most active, interesting ones. So thanks for all of your back and forth we've had with you over the years.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys were kind enough to invite me on the show earlier back in May, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. What did we do? What episode?
We did Danny Phantom.
Oh, yeah, we did. Similar to our Doug experiment last week, we gave it another chance.
That's right, yeah. But today we're talking all things musicals. I'm excited to learn more about your career and just talk favorite musicals, and I'm just super excited. I'm ready to just dive on in.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yes, so I want to learn more about your background, and first off, I was curious to know when you started taking music lessons.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I know I was in second grade when I started voice lessons, and I kind of got bored of that and wanted to switch to piano. I think I had this idea in my head when I was like 7, that when your voice is your instrument, it's like unfair. Like for piano, everyone starts at the same level, but for voice, everyone's different. And that's not entirely true, but I kind of felt like, oh, I want to do a real instrument, and I don't feel that way anymore. But I switched to piano around, I think I was like 8 years old, and I've really never stopped.
Nice. So when did you know you wanted to pursue a career in music?
Well, yeah, that's one's complicated, because I remember in high school, I was kind of okay at piano, and I was way more into the theater scene, and I was doing my weekly piano lessons and practicing just about every day, so I was committed to it, but I was way more into acting and directing and thinking like, oh, I know I want to be in the arts in some way, but I won't be a theater major. And then I became a theater major. I went to what was my dream school at the time, and had a really wonderful experience there at Northwestern University. And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I think it was what I needed. And I got there thinking, I have a good voice, I'm an okay actor, we'll see how this goes. And quickly learning from just the sheer amount of talent at that school, like, okay, I can try to do this, but it's gonna be really hard, and I'm definitely like bottom half. So that what I realized once I got there, though, is so people keep needing me to play the piano for things that are still theater related. I like this more. Then I found out that it's a little more stable. If you don't go into this for the money, but if you're an actor considering the switch to music direction, I think it's worth it on many fronts, unless you feel like you must act, which frankly I didn't. So I did a couple student theater shows and had a great time, but I realized like, okay, this is where the market has led me. It's what I like more, and it's what I'm better at, so I'm just gonna do this. And again, I told myself, I'm not going to move to New York. I love doing this, but I'm not going to move to New York City. And then I did. So similar to the theater major story, I just kept doing the thing that I said I wasn't going to do, but no regrets so far.
That's good. Yeah, so you followed your passion.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was scary,
yeah.
And there's been a lot of sacrifices involved, and it's hard. Sometimes I wish I had a job where I didn't have to, like, evaluate myself every day and think, like, oh, this person didn't hire me back a week later. Do they hate me? And then a month later they do hire me back, and it turns out they were out of town, stuff like, you just get in your head about stuff like that, so that gets stressful, but ultimately worth it.
Right, So then would you say the piano is your favorite instrument?
Yes. So when I read this question, when you sent it to me, I thought of two answers, because obviously piano is the one I play. I mean, I played trumpet in high school, so I could do marching band with my friends, which was great. And I play guitar pretty badly, so those are like the three I actually play. But for the ones I don't, I really love the bassoon and I love the cello, and both.
Oh, cool.
The bassoon especially is pretty underutilized in theater these days, and the cello is pretty much going to be in every pit orchestra greater than maybe 10 instruments, so it's always a good, it's a beautiful solo instrument, but it can play in groups very nicely too. It's a good, like, theatrical instrument.
Oh, cool. And yeah. You have me personally. My favorite's piano too.
Mm,
Actually, I was in bands too. I used to play the glockenspiel,
nice,
the
nice.
bells. Yeah, because I always wanted to play piano, so it was similar. So that's what I played
Yeah,
in elementary and middle school in
that's
marching
great.
band.
Those are fun, and they're harder. The pitched percussion instruments are harder than people think they are, too.
That's true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because people would just sometimes try to pick up my mallet and try to hit my bells. I used to get so annoyed, but then I was like, oh, but they don't know how to play. They
Right,
don't know what
right.
they're doing. So,
Exactly. Or you see the people on like marimba where they have two in each hand. I don't know how they do that.
oh
It's
yeah, uh huh.
nuts.
Then there's also actually, I think there's wooden ones. There's all these different kinds
Mm-hmm.
besides yeah, besides the metal ones.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I'm curious to know who are some of your favorite composers and just your biggest influences.
Yeah, so I played a lot of, my teacher loved Beethoven, my piano teacher, and so she had me
Nice.
learn a lot of that, and I still do love that. I don't, I try to always be working on one classical piece at a time, so like I just learned the Pathetique Sonata, which I was surprised I hadn't learned in high school, and I love Chopin too. I played a lot of
Oh
Chopin,
yeah.
mostly the easier stuff, but I never got into like the real heavy hitters. But like the preludes are good. I'm working on a waltz that he wrote that's kind of fast and frantic, and so I go back to Chopin when I feel like my chops are just rusty. I need to challenge myself again. For opera, I like Puccini, but I'm sort of newer to opera and trying to get more into that. So I think it's really fascinating. It's just such a time commitment to go, as opposed to theater where you're kind of over in 2.5 hours. The opera, you can be there all night. And I love Ravel too. That's another classical composer. I don't think I've ever played anything by Ravel, but he has such great string writing and some piano concertos that are really awesome. For musical theater, the favorites are probably, well, Sondheim is the king, of course. Always a fan. And I like Kander and Ebb a lot, too, who I think are very similar to him, and clearly he had a lot of influence from them. I'm working on Cabaret in the spring, which is a Kander and Ebb
Oh, cool.
musical, and really enjoyed digging into that. It's so complex and interesting. And yeah,
Very
and I
cool.
have a soft spot in my heart for Stephen Schwartz because Wicked was like the show that sort of got this all going for me. I saw it in I think
Oh yeah.
2005, and then was like, oh okay, this is what I want to do, in some way or another. So
Nice.
yeah, those are the big ones.
Cool. So let's get into the specifics now of so you're a music director. So can you talk about just the day in the life of a music director?
Sure, and there are so many different ways to be a music director. Like, you don't even technically have to play the piano. I know some people who don't, and
Oh,
some are just conductors, some play strings, some play bass or
cool.
guitar or drums. Most play piano, though. But for me, a typical day, there really isn't one, but if I'm doing a show, that's pretty much all that I'm doing, right? So if I'm doing like a union contract, 6 weeks of rehearsal, tech, and then we open, that is pretty much all I do because luckily those shows can usually pay you enough to not have to do anything else. Sometimes I'll take on readings at night if I really am if it's an opportunity I don't want to pass up. But yeah, if you're doing a show, you're doing the show, as simple as that sounds. And when you're not, that's when things get interesting. So, like, I've played at NYU for a bit. I do a lot of educational work, and I do Story Pirates, which we'll talk about later, I think.
Yeah.
So you do lots of things to fill the time. Voice lessons. I play for this amazing woman named Jen Waldman, who has an acting studio in New York, and she's just one of the smartest, like, collaborators I've ever worked with. So I'm there pretty often now, group classes. I do my own coachings too when people reach out to me and say, hey, help, I have a callback. Can you teach me these notes? Or sometimes it's making recordings for people from home too. So there really is no typical day. I work with elementary schoolers, high schoolers, college kids, and professionals.
Nice. Wow. So it's a broad range and
Mm-hmm.
just I guess more it's project based.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
And you want to maintain good relationships with the people that can give you work when you don't have it. When it's like, hey, I don't have much for the next 2 weeks. What do you have going on? It's good to have a couple places that'll help you out like that.
That's cool. So what would you say is your favorite part of the job?
I think just all of the collaboration. It's my favorite thing about musical theater, and I meet so many interesting people, and it's a bummer because the show ends and there are great people and you think, oh, I might not see them that much anymore. But then you start the next thing and there's a whole bunch of new great people. So especially in New York, just the talent level is so high and people are so engaged with what they do. And I love hearing from like designers where I know nothing about, like set design or lights, and just all of the collaboration coming together is totally my favorite part of it.
Nice. And then I'm sure you learn from people, you know?
Absolutely.
You learn from them and you get new ideas. That's really cool. So then going the opposite way, what would you say are the biggest challenges of the job?
You know, not having a set schedule is really hard for some people. I've found a way to make it work, but since I have no sense of routine in my job, I have to create it myself. So it's things like, I wake up around the same time every day. Like, I figure if I wake up at like 8 a.m., I pretty much am always good for whatever I need for the day, with exceptions, of course. But I try to create as much routine as I can. But the lack of routine in my professional life is tough. It's hard because you don't know when the next gig is going to be. So if the money is coming in, you think, oh, maybe I'll go on vacation, maybe I'll do this, but you don't know how much you need to save for the future. And another challenge is sort of when I commit to all these like weekly things or day-to-day things, often with kids, and then a show comes in that I can't turn down and I have to disappoint a whole bunch of people. So that's never fun, but most people understand. Like, you're not really burning a bridge when you say, hey, I found a substitute, they're really good, but I can't do this because of XYZ, and I'm sorry. And that's always a bummer.
Okay, so then what would you say are some of the favorite projects you've worked on so far?
Yeah, so I was pretty lucky. Right when I moved to New York, I started working on the Broadway revival of Miss Saigon, and it's my only Broadway show to date. But hopefully more soon. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm only 24 now, but I was 22 and fresh out of college, and just so they were so good to me. The music team would sort of wait up for me for lunch every day, and they'd answer all of my annoying questions, and and the cast was amazing. I'm still in touch with some of them, and I just sort of learned how a Broadway rehearsal room works, and how honestly it's not that different from any other show. There are more rules in terms of the union stuff, but ultimately you're doing the same thing. Everyone's showing up to put on a show, and it's not that different. It's quicker, but you have a lot of time to dig pretty deep into everything, because it's all you do for 6 weeks. You rehearse 6 days a week, 8 hours a day for a long time. So it becomes your family. And then this past summer, I worked on a show that we were hoping was going to move to Broadway, but doesn't seem like it's going to happen anymore, which is a bummer. But it was called Halftime, and there were a lot of really cool Broadway and TV legends in it. It was about a dance troupe of elderly people. It was based on a documentary for the New Jersey Nets basketball team. They had a halftime show with an elderly dance crew, and it's a really cute documentary. It's called Gotta Dance. I highly recommend it. And so the producer who created that also produces the musical, and it went really well. The New Jersey audiences loved it, and that cast was one of the most fun and they had so many stories to tell us. So both of those experiences were just amazing.
That's awesome. So just out of curiosity, Broadway, would you just say it's just more people? That's like the main difference?
Like,
when you're working on a...
Well, the money's better first and foremost, which is nice. Although I was a music assistant on Miss Saigon. I wasn't making anything, but I did ultimately sub in the pit orchestra. So I played about once a month, a little less than that, on keyboard 2, which was really scary, and I learned a lot, and would like to do that again. Subbing is hard. It's just you go in without rehearsing with the orchestra, and you've got to just survive. So it's not for
just
everyone.
Like be ready to go.
Right. It's not for everyone.
Perform,
I'm not sure if it's going to be my thing as I continue in my career, but if someone offers again, I'm going to take it. So
of course, yeah.
But yeah, the money's better. I went to school in Chicago, and the talent level is very high in Chicago too, but for musical theater, there really is just nowhere in the world like Broadway, and it's a chicken or the egg thing. Is it because of the name that everyone comes, or is it, talent? New York just happens to produce a lot of talent. I'm not quite sure what it is, but the level of technique is higher, even if the shows aren't always the most interesting like they might be in Chicago. There aren't as many risks on Broadway. There's a lot of safe choices.
Interesting. So you briefly touched on this, but I'm curious to learn more about the organization that you're a part of, Story Pirates, what they do.
Yeah, so for about a year now, I've been an improv pianist for the Story Pirates, and that started because the music supervisor wrote a show that I music directed called Pharma-Bro, which was a parody musical about Martin Shkreli, if you remember him, that news story, the pharma guy who raised those HIV and cancer drug prices, and he was kind of dominating the news. So it was a parody musical about him. It was hysterical.
Wow.
The composer of that was involved with Story Pirates and said, hey, you got to come do Story Pirates. It's a great thing. And I said, I'm not an improviser. I'm really not. And he said, well, just audition for me. And I did, and I got it somehow, and now I love it. Basically what it is, it's mostly comedy actors and improvisers who we take children's stories and we adapt them for the stage. They'll be like 5 minutes long maybe, and we do 8 of them or 9 of them in a show. We go into schools. We have a weekly show at the Drama Bookshop, which is unfortunately closing soon, so we'll have a new home. But yeah, we do this. We do, during the school year, about 1 show a day. So there are like 200 Story Pirates. There's always one pianist on every show who is just sort of picture like the old Charlie Chaplin movies where you would have a pianist in the theater because there wasn't a sound system yet, who would just sort of be improvising under all of the action. Or like Fairly Odd Parents is a perfect example, honestly, of what I do at Story Pirates. I assume many of your listeners are familiar with the Fairly Odd Parents. The music, someone does something and the music will sort of accompany it. It'll be this sort of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, something like that, you can picture it, all that Guy Moon stuff. So that's Story Pirates. It's a really cool way to like empower kids to tell their own stories. A lot of this, we get so many stories every week, and they're really good, a lot of them, and really funny. So it's my favorite thing I do, honestly. It's such a great sort of community of artists, and it's a nice break from the musical theater crowd because they're all just so funny and don't really take themselves as seriously as the like theater people do. And obviously some of them do both, but the ones who do more the stand-up and improv kind of stuff, it's so different from the people I usually work with. So yeah, I just love it.
That's awesome. So what's the age range for the kids that write stories?
Typically young, but we did a middle school show that I've done one middle school show, and it was fine. They're a tough crowd. They love memes.
Oh, for sure.
They love,
gosh,
because we do create a story every time. It's like, we need a name of a person, and who is this person? And of course, they're always saying the latest meme, Fortnite, Tide Pods. I'm like, whatever.
Oh, God.
But, and the kindergartners are a little too young for Story Pirates, so I would say like 1st to 5th grade is about the best. But we'll do any age, and as long as the kids are on board for it, so are we.
That's so fun, and what a really cool creative idea that's important for kids, creativity.
Yeah, and it actually started at Northwestern about 15 years ago, and then a bunch of alumni moved to New York and just kept it going. And
nice.
So there's kind of a nice legacy there if I can talk to people who are maybe 15 years older than me at Story Pirates and say, I had this acting teacher, and they're like, she's still there? So that's kind of fun.
The way you described it a little kind of reminds me of vaudevillian. Yes. With live music and performing,
100%, Yep. That's
very
a very good comparison.
Nice. So I'm curious to know, what do you hope to accomplish next in your career, or do you have any dream projects you'd like to work on someday?
Yeah, well, I love the musical Cabaret, so in a way I'm doing a dream project there. I'm going to go up to Skidmore College and music direct Cabaret there. It's their first musical they've done in like 6 years, so all the students are really excited. They're a great theater program, but they mostly do plays. So it's their first musical in a while. I'm going to live up there. It's going to be really cold. It's in Saratoga Springs. So that'll be really fun to just sort of get out of the city for 2 months, which is the longest time I'll have been out since I moved to New York. So that'll be really interesting. And it's the first college show I've worked on not as a college student. So I wonder what that will be like.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But other
probably
than...
weird deja vu.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'll be like thinking like, oh, you guys gonna, go to this your usual spot after? And it's like, nope, I'm their boss now. So that'll be weird, but I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
I'm looking forward to just seeing what comes my way. 2018 was pretty good to me, and it's both fortunate and not that there's not a ton of work I can do to get jobs. It's a lot of networking, sending resumes, but mostly it's waiting around for an email that says, hey, we need you to do this. Are you free? So it's, I'm kind of crossing my fingers, hoping that something comes in and that it comes in when I'm free and not when I'm upstate. So,
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to just seeing what comes next.
Cool. All right, so let's get into favorite Broadway musicals. What are some of your all-time favorites?
Ooh, it changes a lot. My all-time number one favorite for years has been Ragtime, though. I think it's such an amazing musical and one that really should be done more often than it is. It's especially relevant now in terms of race relations, in terms of just in America that's changing, and the music is so good. It's musical theater, but it really fits. It's about New Rochelle, New York, and New York City at the turn of the century in like around 1900. So all of the issues that were happening then. I don't know how it captures as many issues as it does, but it's really amazing. Other favorites are Sunday in the Park with George, A Little Night Music, both Sondheim. Love Wicked, obviously. I do love Hamilton. It's the craze right now, but I really think it's a masterpiece. I've yet to hear I know a few people who hated Hamilton, and I've yet to hear a good reason why. There are reasons.
Probably because it's so popular, right?
Right.
People just hate things that are popular.
Right. And yeah, I think a lot of it's to be edgy. There are legitimate issues some people have with it, but I think to say it's like worthless or that you hate it is ridiculous. It's a big Hamilton fan. I love a chorus line, and I sort of want to plug one. I'm not working on it at all, but I love The Prom so much. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see it yet. It's pretty new.
I haven't, no.
It's excellent.
I know about it, though.
Yeah, it's about these Broadway actors who go to a random town in Indiana to try to help them put on like a sexual orientation integrated prom. It's based on a news story where a group of high school parents basically had a straight prom and then a prom for this lesbian girl who wanted to take her girlfriend, and it's so funny. It's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. It's by the writers of Halftime, the show I did in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
So I really like them. They're really smart writers, and the show, it's laugh out loud hilarious, but it's also it's really moving, and I think everyone should see it. So that's my little plug that I had to do.
Nice. Actually, you know what? I'm curious to know, what's the first Broadway musical you ever saw?
Good question. So I didn't go to New York till 2012. My aunt took me for my 18th birthday, and we had tickets to Lion King, so that was going to be my first show. But the night before, we went to the TKTS booth, which sells discounted tickets, and I got a ticket for Anything Goes, which was going on then, and so that ended up being the first Broadway musical I ever saw. It was great. Lion King was great, and I saw both of those kind of back to back. And then
Oh, wow, nice.
it wasn't until 2015.
I have seen Lion King.
Yeah, isn't it awesome?
It is, yeah. It's a good interpretation. It's basically the movie verbatim, but they add a little more to it.
Yeah, and the look of it is so different. Yeah, but you're
Yeah,
right,
absolutely,
the
the way-
structure is exactly the movie.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then also the way they have the stampede, it's really well done on stage.
Yeah, and Circle of
That
Life
seal
is
scene,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For sure, yeah. So that was a cool first two shows to see, a classic
Nice.
and then a sort of modern classic. But then I came back in 2015 to do a research project, And the first show I saw then was On the Town, which was another revival. And then the first show I saw when I moved to New York was The Color Purple with my mom, and that was so
cool.
beautiful. That was about 2.5 years ago.
Nice. You know what? The first one I ever saw was Beauty and the Beast.
Wow.
That's the first musical I ever saw. I was young. I was maybe about 7.
Wow. Yeah, I'm working on Beauty and the Beast at an all-girls high school
that's not
right
even
now.
on Broadway anymore.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is really interesting. Yeah, we're changing a lot of keys, as you can imagine.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's as I
That's
dig into
cool.
it right now, it's a real. People kind of rolled their eyes when Beauty and the Beast came to Broadway, but it's really well done. It's they're trying to put a movie on stage. Basically, they really didn't change anything. There are new songs, of course, but
Yeah, exactly.
but in terms of the look and the sound and it changed Broadway because it was the first Disney show ever. So
And then I guess Lion King, but Lion King, that one's still going strong.
sure is. Yeah, I don't know if it'll
And
ever
then-
close.
I'm thinking now, I think the longest running musical still is The Phantom of the Opera. Have you seen that one? That one's excellent too.
Yeah, I
Amazing
saw it in
music. Andrew
Chicago.
Lloyd Webber.
I
Oh,
saw
cool.
it in Chicago a few times growing up, but I've never been on Broadway, actually.
Oh. I've actually seen that one twice on Broadway.
Nice.
I'm thinking of it.
Yeah, I should do that
That's a great
sometime.
one.
It's pretty affordable, I think. So, yeah, it's such a classic now. And yeah, like you said, the longest running one in history.
And actually, I think Lion King, though, that's the highest grossing musical of all time, believe it or not.
That makes sense. Yeah,
But,
I'm sure with
yeah.
all the merchandise and all
Yeah, exactly. But also now they have that quote-unquote live action movie, even though it's just CGI, it's not live action.
Yeah,
That's
and-
coming out in July, yeah.
And they cut Be Prepared, I think, from it, which it makes me very upset.
What?
It's
Wait,
like-
really? In the movie?
Yeah, it's like the best
That's
Disney
not-
villain song ever.
Oh my god. That's not okay.
So they still got
Jeez.
6 months to put it back, so I hope they do the right thing.
Wow. That's crazy. Oh my god. That's a whole other discussion, though, all these remakes. Oh, geez.
Yeah,
but wow.
I feel like they're just going to do them all at this point.
Because it's like, it's easy money
Mhm.
because they know it's nostalgia, and then new generations of kids will go see it.
Right,
So there you
right.
go. All right, but anyway, so what are some of your favorite songs from all of those musicals that you've mentioned?
That also changes a lot for me, too. My favorite one from the prom that I was gushing about is called Dance With You. And it's sort of like in a 70s pop ballad sort of feel, and it's really uplifting and beautiful. I love On the Steps of the Palace from Into the Woods. I think it's a really interesting piece. There's a sequence in a chorus line called Hello 12, Hello 13, Hello Love. And it's about 20 minutes long, and it's all these performers singing about what their life was like growing up. And I think it's one of the coolest moments in all of musical theater. It's so many different stories, and the music is so uplifting and interesting. And a chorus line really resonated with me from a young age, and I still love it. Trying to think what
Nice.
else from, basically every song in Ragtime, they're all just amazing. And
Wicked, too, right? I love that soundtrack, too.
yeah, that one
Wicked's
I really...
so good, yeah.
It's one of those I don't listen to it much anymore because I probably I don't have room for it anymore. I've listened to it so many times. But every once in a while it's good to go back to.
Have you seen the Book of Mormon?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
that's a great soundtrack as well.
It sure
yeah.
is. Yeah, I love that, all those songs.
And Phantom of the Opera, too, those are all, like, classics. I've used to play a couple of those on the piano.
Nice.
Those songs are so beautiful, yeah.
My teacher wouldn't let
Love
me.
those.
I brought in the Phantom
Really?
book. She said, you can do it. She goes,
Why?
you can do it on your own, but I don't really know how to teach that because I do classical. And I was like,
Really?
all right, fine.
Huh.
So I just kept
Oh,
doing it on
okay.
my own.
Fair enough. Sometimes that's better. It's just kind of a mini passion project.
Right,
just
right.
For the love
and
of
now
it.
it's
yeah.
90% of what I play, so
Nice.
joke's on her, I guess.
All right, so then I have a kind of a broader question for you, but it's an important one, I think. Can you share your thoughts on the importance of music in storytelling as a whole, whether in musicals or even also in shows, movies, etc.?
Yeah, I think there's a reason it's in pretty much everything. There are silent films, of course, and the lack of music is a choice too, of course. But yeah, I think it's really important in every medium. Even, Shakespeare has music behind it. Cartoons all do, without exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the Nicktoons that we talked about, Fairly Odd Parents, what would SpongeBob be without the piratey shanty music? And finding the right voice for everything you want to do is important. Like, even when you, like, let's just look at the Nicktoons, because that's something we both have in common. Like, the sound is so different between all of them. And like Jimmy Neutron is not like SpongeBob, which is not like Angry Beavers, and Wild Thornberrys has all this like world music influence that it totally needs. The theme songs set the tone. Yeah, and like in Story Pirates, they could totally do it without a piano, but it would be a lot harder to act, and it would be a lot harder to get the messages across that we're trying to do, especially when we have lots of songs. Yeah, I think music like enhances the moment. I do think movies and musicals today kind of underscore, if that makes sense. Like, I think there's too much music telling the audience what to feel sometimes. Especially in new musicals, it's like they don't give the audience's ears a break. Sometimes we just want the words, but the music does create an effect, so I get why people overuse it.
Interesting. Yeah, because you're right, because silence can be extremely effective and powerful too.
Right, and it lets the
Sometimes.
actors just sort of do their jobs without any help sometimes. And, there are moments like you can't do the Beast's transformation in Beauty and the Beast without music, but
Right.
there's like 30 minutes of underscore in that musical, and it's kind of ridiculous. There's just so much of it.
Yeah, I think music, especially in movies, it does help with the emotion, what specifically within the story for the characters. Yeah, because that it's just part of the mood, whatever kind of mood you're trying to convey.
And that's, I think, why I ultimately prefer musical theater to like plays without singing, is that there is such an earnestness to it, and that's something I value a lot. There's sort of, I grew up in an era where sarcasm and sort of nastiness was the cool thing to be, and I always resented that. And I think kids now are moving away from that, where it's cool to like things, it's cool to be passionate, and that's a lot of what I got from musical theater, is the message that to just be the thing that it wants to be without apologizing for it. That's something I really appreciate.
Nice. So, what advice do you have for aspiring professional musicians?
Yeah, so sort of what I was saying about my teacher not letting me play Phantom of the Opera, practice what you like on your own terms. If you don't like classical music, you don't have to play it at all. If you like it even a little, I think you should, because it's good training, but if it's going to stop you from, if it's going to make you quit, don't do it. There's rock, there's pop, there's musical theater, there's world music, there's so much different stuff that you can play, and it's all valid. So that is this sort of snobbery sometimes for classical musicians, and it's going away, but there still is this sort of like, oh, musical theater, like it's so easy, and there are musical theater scores that are way harder than classical pieces. So just play what you like and try to have as much business sense as you can, because you have to fight for yourself when you're a professional musician. And it's easy to want to be nice and think, oh, they don't want to pay me as much as I usually get. That's okay. And you can do that sometimes, especially if it's for charity or something, but don't let people lowball you. And it can be better to not have work than to barely be paid, and because that's insulting and it's not fair. So it's a tough world out there. It's worth it, but yeah, your network is really important, and still finding a way to practice every day, even when you're a professional, is really important too.
That's really true of any profession, I think. Persistence is key, especially in the creative fields.
Yeah, like writers can't just stop writing, you've got to keep doing it. So even if you're writing copy for whatever, you still need to foster your own creative projects.
For sure. And I have a bonus question, but actually first, I'm curious to know, because you touched on it though, Who is your favorite Nicktoon composer, would you say?
Ooh, that's such a good question. And it's just gotta be Jim Lang, I think,
Yeah.
of Hey Arnold. To me, no one else.
Yeah.
Guy Moon does amazing work on Fairly Odd Parents and Danny Phantom. But, and I don't remember his name, but the guy who does the Jimmy Neutron and Angry Beavers scores, I kind of...
he does. Oh.
Right? Isn't that fascinating? Ashley...
It's the same composer?
Yep.
That is interesting. Wow.
Ashley caught
Personally,
that one day. She was like, this sounds kind of
Nice.
like Jimmy Neutron while we were watching Angry Beavers. I was like, no way. And looked it
so
up.
Funny.
Sure enough. So that's kind of amazing that he can have such different feels.
Right. Yeah, Jim Lang, he has such gorgeous compositions for sure. I love Mark Mothersbaugh because that's the nostalgia for me, Rugrats. So I love him.
Those are great.
And you know who, Kevin Manthe for Invader Zim, his music is amazing.
Huh.
Honestly. Yeah, he's got a lot of he describes it as industrial and horror for Invader Zim, which that makes sense.
Right,
the soundtrack for that show.
Yeah, those are really interesting. And it was so thrilling getting to interview Jared Faber of As Told by Ginger.
Yeah.
When we did, we got to talk shop a little bit. Him and I do very different things. He's a guitarist first. He's more in the recording industry. I'm a pianist and more in the live music industry. But we had enough to sort of banter about, and I think he did such amazing work on As Told by Ginger. It really captures the angst of the early 2000s in such a beautiful way.
For sure. Okay, so my bonus question, here it is. It's, what would a musical about you be titled?
Ooh, that is a good question. See, a bunch of real musicals just popped in my head.
You could do a blend.
I'm trying to think, because there's a Sondheim review called Putting It Together, and that's the first thing that I thought of sort of just combining all these weird things in my life, and I try to do them all. Yeah, something like that. Maybe maybe We're in Between.
It's applicable for sure.
That's a really interesting question. I'll have to think about that. But something about wanting to do a lot of things and attempting to do them all. That would be what it would be about.
Gotcha. Something with pieces, maybe?
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a show, Life in Pieces. That's a show.
That could be it.
Piecing it together. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Nice.
fun. I was so curious what the bonus question was going to be. I did
That's why I
not
was
guess
like, let's see,
that.
I'll ask it. I think I'll ask in the moment, just see, like, off the top of your head what you come up with.
Yeah, that's great.
This has been awesome. Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining me today. It's been great.
Yeah, this was really fun. I feel like most people don't really understand what a music director does, so it's really kind of neat to explain it and get an audience. So thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Of course. So let people know where they can find you on social media and, of course, about your podcast. Yeah,
so all of my social media is at Casey Robert Reed. My website is www.caseyrobertreed.com. The podcast is the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts, and then therefore, I think wherever you can get podcasts, it should be on all of them because it's on iTunes. I don't totally get how that works, but I know we have listeners who don't have Apple products who can listen to us. So however you listen to your podcasts, we are also on Twitter at FNN_podcast. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/FNN podcast, easily Googleable or searchable on YouTube. That's what I do with my co-host Ashley, and we've been doing that almost 3 years now, which is just crazy.
Oh wow! See, it flies by. I've only been doing this for a few months, but it just flies by.
Sure
all this
does,
stuff. It's crazy. Yeah. And you guys have well over 100 episodes too at this point.
Yeah. I think we'll end the year with 124 total.
Nice. Yeah. And I do. I love your podcast, but you know that, of course.
It's a fun, we like, it's been
Nicktoons.
really fun for us because we haven't watched so many of these shows, but now we feel like such experts in
Right.
them,
Yeah.
I can be such a killjoy if someone at a party is like, remember As Told by Ginger in this episode? It's like, oh, you mean season 2, episode 7, in which blah, blah, blah. They're like, who is this weirdo?
And you would casually be like, oh, I interviewed the creator.
Yeah,
no big
right.
deal.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I mean,
that
that's
is
awesome.
nuts.
You
Yeah,
and Patricia.
that was
Yeah.
all Patricia getting all of those interviews, and they're really amazing. That was so cool. I really enjoyed briefly getting to know all of them, especially in that finale episode. That was a dream.
Right. You had, like all the voice actors, right, and some of the storyboard artists. That was excellent.
We had the
It was
three.
so cool.
We had the three main girls. We had the voice actor who plays Darren. We had a few more. We had Courtney. She was hilarious. And then we had the creators. We had a director. Yeah, that was amazing. That was all Patricia putting that together.
That kind of stuff is always so fascinating to me because it's just amazing to hear the process of creating these shows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so cool. And these shows that are still so... Even though, As Told by Ginger, it was not a huge fan base, but there's so many fans out there. We all love it still to this day.
Yeah, it really is.
Underrated Nicktoon for sure.
Yeah, and it feels like it's sort of thrived in this era. Like, all the episodes are pretty readily available now, and I see, like, articles about them pretty often. So, that was a really neat experience.
Yeah, for sure. I know we're deviating now, but oh my God, I could always talk about Nicktoons.
Totally.
But real quick, your favorite Nicktoon of all time?
Well, there's always do you count Avatar: The Last Airbender or not? So if you do, it's Avatar for sure. If it's too much its own thing, I would say Hey Arnold. I recently watched all of it finally. And
did you? Were there some you hadn't seen?
There were more than I thought that I hadn't seen.
Oh,
so,
yeah. What'd you think? Isn't it weird when you watch an old show, you remember the old one so well, but then you watch a newer one, it's like, oh, like you notice different things about the show, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like there would be the ones
odd,
that
right?
would be on reruns all the time, and it was like, okay, Pigeon Man, of course, I could tell you every line from Pigeon Man, but like, I don't know, like the episode where Phoebe is like talking to the statue that she won by cheating, like if you remember that one.
Oh my God, I hated that episode as a kid, no joke.
Yeah, it's a really stressful episode, and I didn't remember it at all. I'm sure I saw it, but there were lots of weird moments like that of like, wow, I forgot this episode ever happened.
What about the Veterans Day one? I only saw that one once, I think. I hadn't really remembered that one that well.
Yeah, that was a really cool episode because it's more about the parents. It's about the relationship of the kids of Arnold and Gerald with their like parental guardians. And yeah, that was a really neat episode. You're right, I had forgotten about that one too.
Because it must have been a season 5 episode, so it was later in the show's run.
And some people say it went downhill, but I didn't really feel that. I think Arnold changed as a character, for sure. Yeah. He became a bit more flawed as it went on, but I didn't mind that.
I think, honestly, a big part of it, though, was that he had a few different voice actors, and each one brought something new to the character.
Totally.
Because the kids, they had actual kids, and they'd go through puberty, so they had to hire a new voice actor.
Right.
And then also the art style changed a lot, too.
Yeah, I know. That happened quickly. Because it was all in one style, and then it looked more... I know the Jungle movie was done, like, in Flash animation, I think.
Was it Flash?
Maybe not Flash. It was something like that.
Something, different than the show, obviously.
Right.
But
it's,
and also because that was mostly new artists, too.
Right. But they did a great job with the Jungle movie of keeping the tone consistent.
Yeah, and of course having Jim Lang back, too.
Mm-hmm. Always.
To score. That's important. That really is for the mood of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Just the tone and everything. For sure. Actually, I'm realizing I did ask you that question already when I interviewed you guys back on my blog. If you could check that out. I interviewed Casey and Ashley.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun, too, to learn more about the podcast. Yeah. All right, let's close this out. That's going to conclude... Let me do that over. Oh, geez. Sorry. Outtakes. Or maybe I'll leave that in. Whatever. All right. With that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, excuse me, I'll be discussing Pitch Perfect. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.